I think Rhizome's always been really good at trying to respond to new modes of artistic production with museum quality attention, but in a way that makes it accessible to the wide world of weird people who constitute net artists. One of the motivating kind of questions that we've had for this series is, how has the internet changed art? From Rhizome's view, we can see how it's affected your work, and I wonder what kind of thoughts you have on that.
I'd say it's changed it in a multitude of ways. One is the community that it's brought to online digital artwork, which has been extremely motivating to be able to naturally find people who are interested in the work, want to engage with it. It's something that the internet has done to all industries. The ability to put yourself on, no matter who you are, has been huge. Anybody can find an audience for whatever they're doing online, and you can't understate how motivating that is for the individual.
I think your response is really interesting because community is definitely one element. There's some kind of reflexive discourse that takes place that both informs, circulates, recontextualizes, and then redistributes all creation online.
One thing I've noticed is that a lot of things that I was once experiencing to be niche aesthetics, niche formats, such as creating a real-time 3D environment and sharing it online, have become much more broadly shared, much more familiar to a wider audience. At one point, I feel like some of the work I was creating was surprising or misunderstood or extremely niche and personal. And it's just been really interesting to see other people experiencing it more the way I do.
And would you say that your aesthetic is internet?
I guess I'd say it's digital.
And that's because it engages with kind of aesthetic traditions from games, from things that are not necessarily networked.
That's right. The first thing to know is that gaming is inextricable from who I am. Just like taking inspiration from the blue sky, I can't help but take inspiration from the virtual blue sky.
The relationship between net art and cinema has been really well articulated, and I think that there's beginning to be a history of the relationship between internet art and internet culture and gaming that's more critical, because I think a lot of artists share that kind of enthusiasm. I always thought about your work that it feels like there's reference in it, but it also feels very speculative and it's sampling future aesthetics in a really weird way.
Well, this is another good way to talk about how the internet has influenced the work. Part of my process in the early stages of making things is, of course, I kind of start in the sketchbook, and then I quickly move to Photoshop to do a secondary sketch. And so as I'm doing this sketch in Photoshop, I'm just grabbing images willy-nilly all throughout the internet and sort of kind of making a hodgepodge image of various sources that I'll then kind of reimagine into yet another, third rough draft.
So what would you say that the show in DC is about?
I think that it has a lot to do with just the mental experience of things. I'm someone who has had my own mental health struggles throughout life. And for me, the computer and technology has always been my safe space. It's been my place where I feel, free and comfortable and expansive. But likewise, as my career has, been built around the computer, it's also sort of created this very insular relationship of me and a desk in a corner. And so along with these new technologies that I'm talking about, I've also encouraged myself to get up from the computer and start working with my body in physical space more. That journey from single guy right in front of the computer making work to be experienced by a single person on the other end of the screen to moving into a physical space, I think that's a big part of the story of where my artwork has been going.
Hyundai Motor, connecting art and technology.